Ready. We're all set to go with head coach Paul Maurice. Start things off. We'll go with Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good, Sean. Thank you.
Both Neil Pionk and Adam Lowry were talking about the need to limit grade A chances this season. Both felt there was too many last year, although I'm sure every team would feel that way. But what's going to be the key to this team doing a better job at limiting grade A chances over the course of the season?
I'm trying to answer the question that you asked, like the key. But all of these, there's so many pieces of the game to go into the puck being shot in the high danger area, and we've got a chunk of improving. There isn't one. The first and all, fixing any problem is the awareness of it, right? So we want to make sure that we're aware of the fact of where we are in terms of what we give up. And then we would have broken that down into the events that happen that lead to it. At the end of the day, there's a bunch of different places where guys get the puck to the net, off the rush, out of corners, off their forechecks. So we're kind of covering all of them, to be honest with you, Sean. We know that this game doesn't have to be particularly complex. They keep score. After that, it's chances for, chances against, and you've got to do a better job of limiting. We need to do a better job of limiting the chances. That's an absolute fact. And we also need to do a better job of creating more, but the focus would be on limiting them right now.
Go next with Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Afternoon, Paul. You mentioned yesterday that this camp and this season are somewhat tailored to veteran players. Does that mean it makes it particularly tough for young players to potentially crack the lineup, or should we maybe be tempering expectations for when some guys will make it?
Well, I think you should always temper expectations for when young guys make it, right? The answer to that question, just because it's tailored for them doesn't mean they get the job, right? Like, I think when you don't have a training camp to kind of go through a learning curve like you're normally, and a bunch of exhibition games to get going, people that understand their game through experience have an advantage, right? They get to their game, they understand it better. But no, I mean, I really don't spend a whole lot of time, to be honest with you, about age. It doesn't, matter a whole lot. I've had kids come out of junior hockey and play in the top 9. And so I don't really spend a lot of time with that. Is what can you get done today? We've gone through a development phase here for 4 years. I think we're at a point, you can kind of see it in the practices that we're running. Those are pretty heavy practices, and all the players on the ice now look like they can get through it, right? I'm happy, but probably with that more than anything is our capacity. That's an hour and 40 today. And we had a really great finish to that practice in the skate. So don't really care how old they are. I think older players have an advantage finding their game, but that has nothing to do with who starts opening night.
All righty, we'll go next to Nick Ferris from The Score. Go ahead, Nick.
Hey, Paul, just curious to ask you something about this season's divisional setup. Obviously you guys are going to face every other Canadian team 9 or 10 times this year, way more often than usual. And I guess I'm curious, like, as the season goes on, what do you think is going to be the biggest effect of that increased familiarity? Like whether it's, animosity bubbling up, whether it's getting to know opposing tendencies super well, whether it's something else. Just wondering if you think there's a particular way that the schedule will make, this season feel different.
So I think what's going to interest me the most is I feel that there's a pretty significant style difference between the East and the West, and we have to adapt to that because the 3 teams in the East. I mean, I don't know historically, but our record isn't particularly good against Montreal. I don't feel like it is. Like we've had some tough nights against them. It's quite a bit more wide open with Toronto. That's the style of the game that's been played, and in the West that's different. So the Calgary and Vancouver game is a certain style. Edmonton does. It's got players that make it a bit more of a wide open game. The interesting thing is what style takes over, right? Every division. So if you look at just the Central Division, even with Chicago, that's a bit of a skill club the Central's had a certain look to it, right? Because the teams, when you're building that team, you always look to your own division to say how do you compete in your own division. So yeah, we had a bit of a changeover to our roster last year. Buff left, obviously, and we lost the back end, but it's a big, heavy division, right? So those games, Nashville, Dallas, St. Louis, our team, they would be all heavy games. And then you get to the East and you see it's a style of hockey that's a bit more wide open, right? I think you see that in terms of offense, chances for and against, those kind of things. So what's interesting to me is what style is left, right? When the season comes to an end, what's the most predominant? Is it more of a heavy kind of grinding game that I think you see at times Van's trying to play, Calgary's trying to play? We were that team. We've got a little bit of a changeover. But that's the one for me, is the see what style survives.
Go next with Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Paul, good afternoon. Yesterday, we talked a lot about your forward lines, and you were pretty candid with us. You said that actually you can probably read a lot into kind of how you had them formatted, that you liked how they looked, and obviously you had to make a tweak today with Matthew not being available. But I want to ask you about your back end, and I realized Tucker was in the non-contact yesterday. I think he skated in a regular sweater this morning. He was a mainstay in your top six last year.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about how you've got your three main pairs formatted? I think a lot of us assumed Josh and Dylan DeMello might be back together. They're not. Just any insight you can give us on that, and Sami Niku, of course, as well.
Yeah, so there's more potential for change on our blue line. Tucker's in, obviously not in that group because that's where I have him slotted. He's on the mend here, and I think he joins the main group tomorrow, as long as we get medical clearance for that, and then we'll play with that a little bit more. So you'll see it. As long as we're healthy enough, we're going to scrimmage tomorrow. So you'll see us probably make some changes in some of those pairings, and if not tomorrow, the next time we scrimmage, we'll move them around a little bit. And it's not at time, it's not even for the coaches to get a look at it. It's to get a little bit of familiarity that if we get into the season and we make the change, it's not the first time they've skated together, right? So we want to try to we will move the pairs around a little bit in this small 9-day, 10-day block, and then we'll make our decision on it. But I don't know that chemistry would be an issue in our pairs. We can run them as they are, but we're going to end up moving them around a fair amount.
We'll go next with Ken Lee from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Ken.
Thanks for taking some time, Paul. What's the next step in Mark Scheifele's development look like, and what will going up against the likes of the high-end centers in the North Division do for him?
Yeah, so this is a good story, Ken. I think the timing of this and this all-Canadian division, I don't know that people would watch Mark Scheifele play as much as you'd see the games in Toronto or possibly the Connor McDavid games. And he wants in that mix, right? So I think that you're going to see him elevate his game. And you just watched that practice today. It was an hour and 40, and we started skating at about an hour 25, and he's driving, right? Like he can sense that opportunity to be on the stage and to show off his game a little bit and to show off all the things that he can do. So I'm excited for him. I think it's an opportunity that he's earned. I think he relishes it. He's trained for it this summer. I think he's one of those guys that's very, very excited about this division, and he likes to go head to head with the best and show the hockey world where he sees himself.
We'll go next with Jamie Thomas from Jets Radio. Go ahead, Jamie.
Hey, Paul, I know you're a big fan of the back-to-back games in the National Hockey League schedule, so I'm wondering how happy you were when you saw this year's edition of the schedule.
Yeah, the back-to-back, I don't mind back-to-back. I love back-to-back against the same team. I think that makes an awful lot of sense. I know that TV drives the schedule. The only stretch of schedule that the kind of eyebrow raise for me is that teams will play 5 and 7, and that's heavy. That's hard. I mean, I think we all have that stretch. We've got about 7-week stretch that would be as heavy as these guys will ever play in their careers, right? The number of games. But I think we're used to that, maybe more than other teams. You know, I mean, the idea that we don't have to clear customs when we come back home, shaves another half hour. Like our travel schedule for us is about as good as it's ever going to get. Like going out to the East Coast is fine. Going out to the West Coast is fine. We stay in Canada, so we feel that at times that our travel schedule is pretty tough, and that I think we're going to be able to survive this schedule. It's going to be brutal for everybody. You know, you got to stay healthy to win, but I don't mind our schedule.
Next to Murat Tash from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for doing this. I thought it was so interesting at your exit interview that while talking about the defense kind of at the end of last season, that you mentioned that offense and creating chances was something you'd be looking at too. And then you dropped it again in your first question about defense as well. So, I mean, you're going to get some more just by defensive improvements. How much is going to come from that? How much is going to come with new offensive kind of approaches?
So I understand what we have, what our defensive challenges are. I think we're going to have to work. We're going to work real hard. And, geez, I'm trying to pick the right words for you. We'll get to full capacity. We've got one of the best goaltenders in the world. I love our goaltending tandem. We're going to need them. So we aren't necessarily going to become a defensive juggernaut. I haven't particularly liked our offensive game over the last 2 years, the style of offense that we have. So that to me is as big a fix, and it's style, right? I felt that we were pushing the boundary offensively in terms of how many plays that we could make and not taking advantage of some of the more basic meat and potato offensive ideas. And I think we can operate at a higher offensive speed than we have in the past. I also know that that's all a natural part of growth. It's a part of development. You know, you get really skilled guys in and they want to make plays. And I want these guys to make plays. They've heard it 1,000 times. You get an odd man rush, you make your play. And I think last year we were number 2 in odd man rushes, but we ended up about 19th in offense on some of the measures that we use. So I think we got lots of room for improvement in our offensive game as well. The defensive one is going to be a season-long improvement. I mean, we give up clearly way too many high-end chances, but our compete level was really good, right? So we got to make some adjustments with that. We brought, you know, when you add centermen, that usually is an opportunity for you to improve your defensive game. And we finished in 10th. So yeah, we gave up too many chances, but we've got a goaltender and we did battle hard defensively. I'm trying to find the right words for you, and I find it way more difficult on Zoom. I'm going to be honest with you. I got competing ideas in my head all the time, and when I'm in with a room with you, I can get to the one I want to get to. Right now, I got 3 or 4 ideas. I think that we're going to work real hard to get marginal returns defensively, but we're going to do that. I think there's lots of rooms offensively that we can grow with a smaller number of adjustments.
Well, next with Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun again. Go ahead, Ted.
Thanks, Gregor. Paul, last year, Sami Niku has a car accident on the way in for training camp, doesn't get to be part of it, doesn't really get to have a season anything like he was hoping for, or I imagine the team was hoping for. Here he is now, he's out there, he's with Josh Morrissey. Can you just give us a thought on where things stand for him in the organization right now?
You know, I got him solid in the top 8, and that's like me not answering your question, right? He's bigger, he's stronger, he's more competitive, he's developing. this is never as black as white as you think. So I'm just going to try to answer a question with the idea that, like, I think there's with some of these younger players, we've had so many of them that think, well, you don't like the guy or you don't play him. I got lots of time for Sami Niku as a player, and he's right on a nice path. He's going to be in our lineup for the Winnipeg Jets this year. If he takes off while he's in there, he'll get to hang on to that job. I need a certain number of penalty killers so we can win the game. I need a couple of guys for power play so that we can win the game. And he's gonna slot himself into one of those two at some point. He looks good. I'm happy with him. He's in the top 8.
And we'll go next. Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul, sorry about that. Going back to the kind of theme of not liking your offense or the kind of offense you were getting and how defense creates that. I think you and I had a conversation a couple of years ago when I talked to you about how another NHL coach had said your team at that time played defense further up the ice than any other team in the league. You choked teams off, wouldn't let them out of their zone, and that created a lot of those offensive chances. I'm interested in knowing if the goal is to get back to that style of play, or you've mentioned that it's a different team now. Do you even have the personnel to have that style of play?
Yeah, so you look differently just on changes of personnel, right? The philosophies can be the same. You do have to change maybe some system reads. So I just go back to the start of your question. I'm not saying I don't like our offensive game. I think we can do more with it. I think we've been trying to be. I think we stayed in a certain style of offense, and there's more different styles that we're capable of doing with all different players. Your high-end skilled guys, Nikki Ehlers, can do more than just one or two things. Like we can broaden our offensive approach is, I guess, a better way of explaining with it. We played a very hard gap, very aggressive game 2 years ago. When you lose 4 of 6 defensemen, you're not going to be able to continue to do that. But there were parts of our defensive game in terms of holding lines and our D gap that actually improved, and we'll continue down that path. I believe in a very aggressive defensive game, so it's not a passive game. We're not sitting back and giving ice. I also think when you're young up front, it's a tough game to play in your own end for long periods of time. So at our best, we wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on our end of the ice, but we'd also had a pretty veteran crew back there. Now we're starting to get a very veteran forward group, and we're a little bit maybe younger on our blue line. We can balance those things out. We can rely on our forwards more in our end of the ice. We can there's lots of things that we can do to still stay true to a style of defensive game that I believe in.
We'll end things off with Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, when it comes to Dave Lowry, why was he a fit for your staff, and how do you see him fitting in with your group there?
So what Dave does is he comes to the National Hockey League with over 1,000 games as a player, which means he understands the smaller nuances than guys that didn't play, right? So, but that's only a piece of the coaching job. He's also run special teams in both his NHL stints, so he has opinions on those things. He's also spent quite a bit of time on penalty kill and had success there. And and then there's the fit, right? The fit in your player room. You as the head guy, you've got to get a read on your room, what kind of people they resonate with. I talked to Dave 4 years ago when I hired Jamie Compon and Todd Woodcroft. I talked to Dave about it, and it was just not the right time. Adam was still coming in, and he still hadn't cemented himself in the National Hockey League, so it'd have been maybe a little bit more awkward. And now it's not. I mean, I don't even know if the two of them talked. He's a coach out on the ice, and he's fit in that room. And it's good to have a guy that was a career player and a career coach. When you fire out a question, he's got 2 or 3 experiences with the question. So it's been good. It's been a real good fit for us, and he's been involved and active in this camp. And it's part of our ability to look different in terms of how we're practicing.
Thanks very much, Coach.